We decided to pick just a few takeaways from the debate we had over the last day and a half, where we think issues arose and where we, the two of us, believe that we have some topics which need further consideration, where we think these could be further research topics and as well which could be relevant policy options. And we're going to present 4 of those takeaways to you, and Thales is going to start with the first one.
Yeah, the first takeaway that we have discussed and we think is really important from all of these discussions that we have had is about this tension between the global nature of these platforms and their global, regional and national developments. Because sometimes we tend to easily think either that this is a global thing that needs simply global solutions and all the risks, the problems and the benefits are more or less the same in the whole world. Or we go sometimes to the other extreme and think that each place, each country has its own single context and needs to deal with the problem alone. We have realized that there are actually many issues that are the same across countries because these platforms, they are indeed global companies. At the same time, we have seen specific realities. We have seen developments, for example, in Brazil and in India, that are not necessarily a development, but a parallel thing that has been going on in these countries. So we really have to ask to what extent an European proposal or the remedies that we in Europe propose for these problems really tackle the problems that we have in the European Union. If possible, considering also spillover effects in other regions, but not taking the problems that maybe American society is facing, and in Europe we are not facing exactly these problems as our things to solve, and then not craft a solution for a problem that is not our problem here, that is maybe a societal problem in the United States. This was our first takeaway.
Yeah, and in particular, it is interesting to learn from the experience from other countries, from other continents, actually. But let's don't forget that our problems are specific as well. And in that sense, we can learn from one another. But at the end, problem solution will be a homework for us in Europe. The second issue we were discussing goes back to what Shannon has presented to us, and which made obviously a deep impression on us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have chosen that kind of takeaway. And this is the importance of data. Where do we get data from in our research on digital platforms, on digitalization rather than only platforms? We have seen and discussed now in the very last panel that the internet is much more than just platforms. We tend to discuss platforms as the internet, which is not the case. So the platforms might be one way of presenting what's going on in the digital world. And they are dominant. Yes, that's true. On the other hand, there is much more than the platforms. And when we discuss and when we research on this, we need to check where the data comes from. What kind of data is available to us as researchers? And there we consider it a major risk to rely on the data which is given to us as researchers by the large institutions. So if we rely on data which comes from Google and from Facebook and from other GAFAMs, then we run the risk that we are working on manipulated data, that we are working on non-complete data, and that we as researchers follow in a way exactly the traces they are producing for us by giving us a specific set of data. We are never under control. We are never in control of the entirety of the data. We will never be in control of the data set they provide to us as researchers, because they have a a vested interest in what kind of research is done. And in that sense, this constitutes an important risk for us as researchers. We must not follow that kind of offered data. It's very comfortable, of course, if they open the API to some extent and we then use the data which flows out of that. That's comfortable for us. On the other hand, it's a huge risk and we must not fall into that trap. And we don't have a solution to this, obviously. We managed in the analog world, after all, we managed to get different data sets out of the classical media, but I think we have still a long way to go to find verified data sets which go beyond the interest of those who deliver the data.
And the question that arises from this is then if we don't have this data available from these, especially from these platforms, is okay, then how should we as researchers proceed if we don't have a full picture? This is something important in this second point. Our third point that is also connected to this is that we have somehow to move, and we are moving indeed, from this simple regulatory framework that we used to have, telecom regulation, media policy, these two distributors and producers, so to say. We are moving from this to a much more complex framework. And usually we tend to think about platform regulation, and this is actually the title of this network, media and platform regulation. But for example, VBOD has suggested even 4 categories to actually tackle what is going on with these platforms. So there might be even more categories and regulatory regimes, so to say, to cover the different services that we are at this moment is still seeing as platform services. And we are moving indeed to this more complex framework, and we have to be open to think about intermediary regimes that are not exactly media policy, but are also not telecom policy, like what to do with content moderation. This is very likely a third regime that is not yet on the table, and we have somehow to invent this. And we as researchers, we play also an important role here, giving ideas and input to regulators what to do with these regimes.
And we have been struggling over the last 4 decades with just these 2 simple settings of legacy, like telecommunication regulation and media regulation. This was already totally complicated to us. Now think if we are multiplying this, so the future ahead for researchers is bright. The final takeaway we would like to discuss and present to you is coming from the debate between our policy and industry friends who have been presenting today, from the European Commission on the one hand and from Metaverse on the other hand, which is the new word for Facebook. And I was, or both of us, we have been a bit suspicious. How comes this person from Metaverse praises the European framework of legislation? How comes that he is so happy and underlines that he's going to support the initiative of the DSA and DMA, and that they have little criticism here or there, maybe about the details, but in general, they are fully in support of that. This makes us suspicious. And we found the weak point, I think.
We have the solution.
We have a solution
to solve the problem.
Right. And the weak point was actually addressed at the very last statement of the Metaverse colleague here, when he said, personalization is the core of our business. Don't touch personalization. And I think he pointed to the really important thing. Everything else might be regulated, but don't touch personalization. And here is the problem, because personalization creates the main problem if you look back to what has been happening in Brexit and the Trump elections, in Cambridge Analytica, this is about personalizing political messages. This is about personalizing emotional messages to people who are vulnerable to that. And exactly, it's this personalization which is threatening our democracy. And I think this is exactly not addressed by the DMA and DSA. There are everything around that, but they don't touch the core business model, which is so threatening to our democracy. And this, I think, and we are very grateful for him to point us to this fact that in his last statement, this is exactly where it hurts. And this is where we need, as researchers, we need to focus our attention to. So in that sense, he made himself transparent at the end. Very nice. Thank you very much for that. But I think we should be very considerate of personalization as the main threat of this type of digital platforms we have here.
Yeah, and this was not only an issue in his speech. We have noticed, for example, in Clara's speech, in Shannon's speech, how the business model is not has not received that much attention that it should have from these regulatory initiatives in different countries. And we do need to make a stronger case for European regulators, policymakers to touch this point. I wouldn't be that dramatic like Joseph that we are not doing this at all with DSA and DMA. In DMA, we do have some points to make this business model more accountable, more responsible, but I think we do need more than this, and really to think seriously whether we want to have this personalized web that that we now have.
We need more is the key word here. We would like to make a little advertising spot here because we need more students and applications who are students who are interested in media and platform policy. And there is a fabulous opportunity ahead of all of us here. And this is a winter school near Salzburg in February, where we are going to address these platform policy issues. Some of the people in the room here will be part of the faculty there. And it's an offer and opportunity by the Euromedia app network. For just 50 euros plus a support for your travel cost, you can spend a week with in the beautiful landscape of Salzburg in winter, which is beautiful. Plus you have intellectually excellent company to work on a manifesto on digital platform and digital journalism actually. So whoever is interested, maybe from home or from people in the audience, please check our website, which is euromediaapp.org, and there you will find all details. Application deadline is the 22nd of November.
Yeah, it is Monday, so
it's not that far away.
Yeah, it's not that far away, but you also don't need to do anything very. You don't need to produce a research project of 15 pages to apply, so it's quite easy. Whoever is watching us in the internet or here in the audience and has interest, please visit our website, our web page, and there you have the details. Yeah, this will be 1 week from Monday to Friday, and yeah, Helle will be there, some others, Josef, I will be there,
Michael will be there,
Michael will be there, so we will have many of our faculty here.
Claudia will be there.
Claudia also will be there, and the students, our target is master and PhD students, although we also accept applications from other interested people. The idea is that you produce a manifesto on politics of the news ecology in Europe now that we have to deal with platformization. This is the idea.
Well, this ends our intervention here, and I don't want to leave the floor without congratulating the fabulous team of organizers here in Brussels yesterday and in Leuven today. It's a team around Lien de Hanens, with the support of Hanne and Ans and the technicians here who made a great job to enable us in these dark times of a global pandemic to make it possible together, to make it possible to discuss even with people who cannot travel, who didn't want to travel, bring us together on this platform, take so good care of us with regard to our bodily needs in this fantastic setting. I've never talked in a chapel like this. So for me, this is totally, it's a real innovation for me. And I would like to thank you all, and all the credits go to this fabulous team here. Thank you very much.